What up, everybody? Welcome to What Up Sports, and we have a special guest here. We have Paul, the Marin County Assassin Nave, former WBF champion, right? Welterweight champion. Yeah,
World
correct.
champion.
And he's been boxing for a long time. You last boxed in 2015. How old were you when you boxed last?
Oh boy, let's see, 54.
54.
Oh gosh.
54 years old.
Yeah.
That's
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Crazy.
So I'm going to start right off. Are you still involved in like promoting boxing or working in the boxing world?
I talk to different people back and forth, but I just haven't really been involved, unfortunately, because I am a tax preparer, tax professional, and I do income tax, and it's been year round lately with the pandemic and everything else. Been crazy busy.
So there's a lot of story with you, right? You started boxing at San Rafael High. Is that correct?
I actually started boxing in 8th grade.
8th grade.
Yeah. I used to go to St. Raphael's school, a Catholic school in San Rafael. Then I transferred the last 3 quarters of 8th grade to Davidson Junior High in San Rafael. And while I was there was a couple of kids that are going to a gentleman named Jack McPhee's house. In the basement of his house, they were teaching the kids how to box. And the other nice thing is, if you did 100 sit-ups with a 10-pound weight behind your head, he'd buy you a banana split later that night. So I kind of went for the banana split first, but I actually was interested in learning, taking care of myself. I mean, my father, when I was young, taught me the basics, the jab, 1-2, and try to protect yourself. But anyhow, when I heard he was teaching kids how to box and you were going to certain boys clubs and having fights, I thought that'd be really interesting and something I'd like to try. And so anyhow, I went to that basement, Jack McPhee's house, and learned all the basics and got that the ice cream, of course.
I love that story.
Yeah.
No, it's true.
Banana split.
Banana split. But there was a lot of it was interesting though. There's a lot of kids, younger and some older boys too, which ironically at the gym there, one of the older kids that was training and fighting a few, amateur fights, right? Well, that was Peter Howes was one of them. And Peter Howes ended up years later being one of my promoters, when I fought Greg Haugen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, 3 times you fought Greg Haugen, right?
3 times. Yeah. 3 world title fights with Haugen.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Was this Jack McPhee, was he helping you? Did you have like an official amateur career, and was he the guy that got you started? Or
yes. What happened? You had to be 16 to participate in the San Francisco Examiner Golden Gloves, and he had taken us there when I was in 8th grade. I was 15, but we watched, and it was amazing. I mean, when I went, they were just packed, and there was Carol Doty who walked through the whole place. She used to be a stripper, and she'd walk through the crowd. The whole place would go nuts, and there was also Kenny Stabler, always sat front row, Oakland Raiders quarterback Kenny Stabler. And a lot of famous people would go watch these amateur fights. And as a kid, like I said, in 8th grade, I watched them too. And then I had to wait till I was a sophomore in high school to participate. And so I finally got the opportunity. During that time, before that, though, I only had like 2 fights, one that counted. I fought at Cloverdale. They match up kids. And I fought in Cloverdale and had won a fight. And then there was another time, let me see here. Yeah, anyhow, there was a few different fights that, that I got. It's called, what do they call them? There's a term for it. They were amateur fights, but they didn't, you just kept count of them, and they match kids up based on weight. And, later, I mean, the first time I fought a kid, he weighed like 30 pounds heavier than me. Something they would never do now. Real quick. And at Cloverdale, they took us during the day, and they match up with kids, from the other team from Cloverdale. and they just put you in the ring and let you spar with the kid for a minute and see if it looked like a fair fight, you know. And in the weight there, like I said, I fought a kid 30 pounds heavier than me. But the ironic thing is there was also a couple kids that would do what you call sandbag. So that's why that kind of stuff didn't last long, where you just fought a guy that looked like it was fair. And some guy act like he's no good, and then gets in the ring and the guy's phenomenal, you know. Yeah. So, but anyhow, that's kind of what they did. They kind of put you in there, you sparred a little, looked like a fair fight. That's who you fought. And like I said, I fought a kid 30 pounds heavier than me, but I had won in my very first fight. And I won my second fight. The guy actually got nervous and left right before the fight, which was interesting. And anyhow, then once I was 16, I got to go into the Golden Gloves, which was huge, you know, at that time as a kid. And anyhow, I had to fight 5 times, 5 nights. They even threw in a day fight. You know, normally it's just every night, but they did a day fight because they had so many kids that participated. And I was very fortunate. The very first time I ever went in the Golden Gloves, I won the whole thing, you know, as an amateur, and the kids with 8 or less fights, which was called novice division. And but anyhow, I won the whole Golden Gloves. It was pretty cool. And then you can imagine on fight at the finals of that, the 5th and final fight, the place was sold out. The Civic Auditorium in San Francisco. You know, I don't know what's that, 16,000 people or something. It's really amazing. But that was pretty cool. And the Examiner sponsored those, the Examiner Golden Gloves. But anyhow, and then I ended up a second time over the years fighting back and forth. I won the junior division also. And then I ended up turning pro for even fighting in the open division as an amateur. I turned pro. And that was in 1985.
Right.
And what made you want to turn pro? Like, how long was the process of being amateur, and you know, how did you know that it was time for you to go pro? Because a lot of people they go 100 amateur fights to work everything out, and then they go pro. What were you thinking about?
That's an excellent question. I'll tell you why. As a kid, I played 5 years of Pop Warner football, loved football, and I had done that. And then in high school, I played all 4 years of football, but also I was on the wrestling team, and I ended up doing very, very well in the wrestling. I won 3 straight years, the MCAL or whatever in Marin County. But anyhow, won the league championship 3 years in a row, and a lot of the tournaments I won and all that. But anyhow, my main sport ended up being wrestling. And anyhow, then what happened is in the 8th grade and all that, whatever, I boxed, so I had experience. And during Sanford High School 4 years, we did have fight nights. The very first year when I was a freshman is the first year they ever had. It was ironic. I mean, my freshman year was the first year they ever had those fight nights. And that was Novato High School used to have them first. And there was a couple of schools, Novato and I think Drake, but had started first. But anyhow, Sanford came in, and that was 78, because my senior year was 78, 79. So I'm trying to remember what month it was.
Muster brought that in, right? Coach Muster brought that in. Wasn't that a big fundraiser for the football program?
Well, some of the money went there, but actually, yeah, there was gosh darn it, one of the other, Coach Muster was involved a little bit. But so was a couple of the other, what was it? There was actually a gentleman there. Well, Coach Muster's assistant. I'm trying to think of his name.
Wiley?
Yes, thank you, Coach
Dave Wiley.
Coach Wiley. Dave Wiley. Thank you. Love Dave Wiley. Yeah. Dave Wiley actually worked my corner. So Dave Wiley was a big part of it. Dave Wiley. And the other gentleman, this is interesting, he was actually the janitor there at Sanford High School, but he had fought as a professional boxer. And an old Italian guy, gosh, I can't think of his name right this second. Oh boy. But anyhow, he was, had actually fought professional, and he was a janitor. And so anyhow, on the fight nights, there was, he worked one corner. And then not Coach Mustard, but Dave
Wiley.
Dave Wiley, Coach Dave Wiley. Yeah, it was him. He was a football coach also. But Dave Wiley was in my corner. I was in his corner actually, and Dave Wiley's. And so anyhow, so that's how my thing started too. I mean, I had fought twice or once that really counted. A couple times as an amateur, just in these smokers. They call them smokers. That's it, smokers. An interesting term, but I guess because the years in the old days, people go watch those fights and they'd be, and there was, even when I fought, some of those amateur fights, there'd be smoke all going through the room, barely breathe. But anyhow, for people smoking and watching the fights, but they called them smokers. And those were your match kids up, but they weren't official gold gloves or anything like that, But anyhow, so Coach Wiley basically ran the fight nights, and I was the first, whatever our class, first ones to ever do that. And I actually fought my first as a freshman, just because I had a little experience. I have had to fight a senior. So I fought a senior as a little freshman. And that's a big deal when you're, in high school. There's a big difference. You're growing up those ages, 14, 18, or, to 17, whatever. But anyway.
That's a kid and a man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Really?
I know, a little bit there. And, but anyhow, luckily we had a little bit of experience, and it was a banger, a great fight. And I won the fight and against the senior. But that was a pretty fun, interesting time. But real quick, and then the very next, now watch this. And the only other person that also had experience like me was Andy Nance. And Andy Nance is another boxer out of Sanford High School in Marin. And he had boxed with Jack too. But all he did every weekend, box. I did football, wrestling, and then I boxed, on the side. And but anyhow, so the second year, the only guys that had experience, a few fights was Andy and I. And Andy had 100 and something fights, and I'm fighting them, But anyhow, we ended up having a draw. And then we had to fight again the next year, because we had that draw. And now we had over 200 fights. I think I had 10, but we had to draw again. I was a guy going there trying to take his head off, and he tried to move him box more. But anyhow, 2 draws, 2 years in a row. And then my senior year, I had to fight twice. We had so many kids that went out. There was like a middle of the week fight we did, and then the finals or whatever, not finals, but just another fight night. But anyhow, I won both of those. So I won them all except 2 draws with Andy. And then Andy went on to do well and win the gloves a couple of times, open division at least once. And but anyhow, yeah. So so that's where it all started. And Jack McPhee, like I said, went the Golden Gloves, and as a sophomore in high school, and then years later, I ended up not years. I also ended up fighting some of those other smokers, and then turning pro in 1985. And I had actually a limousine service during those years, about 9 limos. And
that's how I went to my senior prom, and my dances was in your guys' limos.
Oh, thank you. Wonderful. Yep. Yeah, that was
always... a lot of bowling.
But that was the absolute busiest time of the year, where the homecoming dances and also the graduation dances, and But anyhow, when you graduate, those were huge times, and that was the busiest days for the limousine service. That's for sure.
Yeah, and then Nave Lanes, the bowling alley.
Yeah, I used to work there Sunday and Monday nights for a long time. Even just out of high school. Yeah.
Good times there. It's a whole shopping center now, but
yeah.
So your pro career.
Yeah. So ironically, I was still, had my limousine service and working and trying to remember now. And then what was funny in that kind of how it started, and that's why I give credit. Andy Nance had turned pro, and all he did was fight, and that's it. And he had different guys that helped him out, so he didn't really have to work and all that. And a team of 4 individuals, men that kind of were his managers, and so he was able to, like I said, not have to work and could train properly, and he did, and trained hard, and won the state title, California title, and and fought over the years. And but anyhow, and then what happened was me and Andy were really close, good friends, and so I ended up going with him a lot to Newman's Gym in San Francisco. That's where we actually trained a lot, Newman's Gym. And it actually, trying to remember the street it was on, it moved up like, 4 or 5 blocks further, up the hill. But anyhow, it was still on the same street. And, but anyhow, we used to train at Newman's Gym. And that was, a very, almost like a museum, really cool place. And a lot of history there, in Newman's Gym. And then we met a lot of world champions there, and I sparred with a few incredible fighters. And as a young kid, and then obviously when I was older, so sparred some world champions and all that, others, But well, real quick, sorry, but
yeah,
what got me going was Andy. I would go down there with Andy needed sparring. That's how it kind of started. He was getting ready. He was fighting pro already, and before I turned pro. And he needed help with sparring. And so he had called me and, all right, I come down, and I started going to the gym, Newman Gym. Well, I'd gone a few different times when I was younger, but I mean, now I'm at my limo service. I'm busy all the time. But anyhow, he said, please, Paul, can you help me out? And I needed sparring partners. And I'm having trouble. So I started sparring with him. And since I got back in the gym, what the hell, I might as well, box, also. And so anyhow, so even though I owned that limousine service, I started training all the time and turned professional. And I at first, that's where I started fighting on his undercards, his fights, is where I started getting experience, in the pro ranks, So and I actually lost my first fight, and close decision. And then my second fight, I got put into a guy that took second in the whole nation as an amateur in the nationals. And but ironically, I beat him. I knocked him out in the first round. It was of all places up in Santa Rosa on the undercard of Jack Padilla's fight. Jack Padilla was the main event. He was a great fighter from that area. And Santa Rosa, Sonoma.
Yeah. So what was your greatest moment in boxing?
By far, winning the world championship over 3-time world champion Greg Haugen on ESPN in Marin County, right in my backyard, ESPN2. But it was televised internationally, or nationally. Yeah.
That was
cool.
amazing.
Thanks.
I think more deeper is, are you still friends with Greg?
I am, but I've always been cool with Greg. Matter of fact, it was ironic. The very first time I met him, the promoter took us in the same car. This is, probably a couple months before the first fight. Yeah. And what happened is, trying to think, we're both 37 years old. And if you're 35 or older, you had to show up in front of the commission just to make sure you're okay and blah, blah, blah. Because they had this, they don't really have that anymore right now. But they just had a rule that you had to show up for the commission and talk to the commission about, wanting to fight and you're older at that age, over 35. Like I said, we were 37. And so anyhow, I was with the promoter who was promoting the fight, Peter Howes, and we picked him up at the airport. And I just talked to him, everything's cool. But I mean, you're, still 2-3 months before a fight, so no one's not too nervous at that point, and he was cool. And I was, respectful and all that. I mean, the guy's 3-time world champion and later became 4-time world champion. But he was a good guy. But he also, as time went on, and it got close to the fight, he was a miserable, angry guy. Oh yeah, he's famous for that, and turned into a big jerk at times, and and then he got such a big ego, he can't take anything, and always the excuse and this and that. But I mean, he's an amazing fighter, and he beat Hector Camacho when he was 37-0, and he beat Boom Mancini, and who was the other person? One time, Vinny Pazienza, but Vinny beat him twice, But those are amazing fights, and he was a tough guy, and I went and fought him, and I fought him the hard way. I fought him with strength. I could have sat there, moved, and stayed away and stayed outside, but I brought a fight, made a hell of a fight, and ended up getting knocked down and run right into a punch the first round. Thank God I got through that, and then I came on and nothing to lose and let it go, and went all 12 rounds, but I won a unanimous decision, all 3 cards.
What was it like fighting in front of like, it's like your hometown? You fought in your hometown, right?
Yeah, well, I have fought 12 scheduled 12-round championship fights, whether it be for Northwestern United States, which I won, the Southwestern United States, the IBO Intercontinental, the World Boxing Board title. I had 4 other titles I worked my way up and won. And that was one of the things. I mean, I had to, they don't just let you fight for a world title. You got to do. I had an 8-year streak of being undefeated, winning, but I only fought like once a year.
Right.
But still undefeated for 8 years, and then fought tougher and tougher guys. And I ended up beating a guy that, what's his name? Can't think right now, but an incredible fighter that had been doing real well. And I fought him twice. We fought once, and it ended in a draw, even though I was ahead by 1 point, but because of the World Boxing Board rules. But there was a cut, possibly from a headbutt, whatever it was. And so it ended up a draw. But usually they go to the scorecards, but their rules were it's an automatic draw, or the other guy wins if he's ahead. So it was crazy. But yeah, we fought in a rematch, and I was fortunate enough to knock him out in I believe it was the 11th round. In an amazing, incredible, tough fight.
Do you think?
And that was for the, let me see here, World Boxing Board title.
Yeah. Okay. Do you think that, because you're a wrestler, if you were back in, your prime and back in the days, that you would have become a UFC fighter? Would you have liked the mixed martial arts?
It's so funny you say that. I would have been amazing, perfect for that type of fight. In MMA, it would have been right up my alley. Because, like I said, I was a 3-time league champion, and I was wrestling was my gig. And but I mean, when you get older, they can't pay you enough. It's boxing is brutal, unforgiving as it is. Let me tell you. But that game, it's just, you got to. I didn't see too many older folks, doing that. But yeah, that would have been right up my alley for sure. And it just sad. It just came a little too late for me, where I'm in my 40s or whatever already when it started to come around. I'm 61 now.
So when's the
next
fight?
Time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I do have people that do.
You and Greg Haugen 4.
Yeah. Yeah, we ended up the third and final one, even though, they took a point from me, for hitting towards back of the head, which was so wrong, because I had told the referees, they come in your room, they, before the fight, both fighters, they tell you what they expect, any questions and all that. And I said, yeah, I got one question. And one of them that I said, last time I fought Haugen, every time, at times when I should come in, he'd duck his head way, way down below my waist and his waist. You know how you're not supposed to hit below the waist, but below his waist and my waist. And he says, hey, if he puts his head down there, go ahead and hit him. That's his fault. Thing happened. One of the rounds, there he goes. Whang, blast him right to the side of the head, right? Kind of to a back, hit the side. Anyhow, and the referee goes and takes a point off. And I'm looking at him thinking, oh my God, you told me if he puts his head down there, go ahead and hit him. And yeah, they took a point away, And then he got fortunate in the very 12th and final round. He got a knockdown, and I was chasing him the whole the rest of that round. But anyhow, so he got basically 2 extra points, and it still was a draw. Yeah. I had him, but that's just the way life is, the way it goes sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
But then I'll just never forget that. And I was unfortunate in taking the point off or something. They told me, go ahead and do that,
Yeah. Exactly. So again, you fought all the way to 2015, which is crazy. So taking care of your body was very critical. What was the main thing that you focused on when it came to these fight camps that got you ready for the fight, but also long-term that kept you in shape?
Well, watch this. So I basically fought from 1985 to Haugen. The third and final fight was December 17th, 1999. So basically right before the big 2000, the year 2000. And trying to think all those years, it was crazy. I was, I would say not so much the world title fights, but before that, I was like anybody else, working, having fun, partying, drinking, etc. And then all of a sudden, Navi, you got to fight. Then when I was younger, like amateur, I would all of a sudden, I would, stop cold turkey, whatever I was doing, drinking, eating, and all that. And then 6 weeks later, I'd fight. It was crazy. 6 weeks is all. And, but I'd stop cold turkey, like I said, and no drinking or whatever. And yeah, I was trained six weeks, and that's how I did as a professional. But anyhow, the minute's over, back to living life, partying, having fun, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, Navi, here you go again. But it was always that, minimum, whatever. When it got to the world title fights, it was trying to remember now, at least a month, no drinking at all. Actually, it was more than that. It was 2 months. Like I stopped just the minute I heard and all that, and I'm possibly fight the Hog the world title and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, no more drinking. And again, and what it was too, I always needed like four weeks to get back in that top shape. It was 4 weeks of training hard. I would, this is what I used to do. I would take, when I was younger, as a professional, the first 2 weeks, I would just run, 2 weeks of running. And then the last 4 weeks before fights, it was a 6 week thing. But the pro fights, I would work out and run. So I'd run in the morning and work out. But like I said, all the minute they said, "No, we've got to fight on this date," and it was always 6 weeks before, I did 2 weeks of just running and then running in and working out. And then years later, when it got into the, I come back after in 2009, after retiring basically in 2000, right? Well, now it was to work out first with sweats on and all that to get my weight down before I'm going to run and get all that weight off, before you run and hurt yourself, because I was always a little heavier as I got older and just had to cut more. But I actually fought most of the time is 140. And then the world title fight with Haugen was the first time at welterweight, in 1998. So 98 until the end of 215 was all welterweight. And there was a hiatus in between there. Like I said, I took basically 9.5 years off, right around 10 years, from 90 to 99.
Yep. Hey, Paul, I'm so thankful you came on the show. I don't have so much time, and man, you're amazing. You've always been so good to everybody around you. It must be that Italian family. Your parents were always so good to everybody, and you just always been that guy that just you've just been such a great guy. A boxer, taking it to an amazing level, but also just the man of the community. And so I appreciate you coming on, and I thank you. And we'll see you again, probably out at a football game or something.
Rob, Rob and Davis, I'm very appreciative, and I thank you too, a lot. I thank you for a great time, and yeah, it was a crazy event doing all that fighting. Let me tell you, it's crazy.
just to let everybody know why Paul is sweating. It is a heat wave right now.
Yeah.
And he's in Marin County, and they don't put air conditioners in homes out there.
I'm actually at my office.
Yes,
it's not working.
Paul, I appreciate you all. We'll talk to you in the future, man. And thanks a lot.
Thank you, Rob. Take care of yourself.
All right, you too.